Hello, 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 people. Right, what's happened today at the F1? Um, Very interesting race in the F1. I don't normally say that. Um, and it wasn't made entertaining for 90% of the time by Vettel and Hamilton. It was made very entertaining by the two Red Bulls and the first lap and a half. But no, it was still a bog standard dull race. Just that Ricardo took out Verstappen and Bottas's tyre exploded with a few laps left to go. About a third of it was on a safety car, so it wasn't a very good race. Chris Coleman's been sacked by Sunderland, and the club has been sold on the same day. There's a new takeover. I was surprised when he took the job on last year in November, and we shall see what happens with that. And then Celtic have won their seventh title in a row in Scotland. And they're 10 points clear of Aberdeen, who are 3 points clear of Rangers and Hibs. So that's interesting. The Great Britain men's ice hockey team has made it into the placey comments in there, and we shall go from there. I mean, Celtic obviously beating Rangers 5-0 says it all, really, about Scottish football. We've had discussion after discussion on this channel about, if, not when, they're going to win. I will say this: you are a very, very optimistic fan. Because the gap is there. I mean, Steven Gerrard is linked to replacing Graham Murphy in the summer. Whether that would be I'm going to have to move room because the internet's just not working. Shit. We're going to migrate. We're migrating. Yeah, we're migrating because the internet in this house is fucking shit. Fuck. Oh, time to migrate. Oh, fucking crap everywhere. Actually, bear with me. Oh, right, we're back. Right, well, carry out to migrate rooms again because the internet connection is just absolutely woeful in this house. So yeah, Celtic have wrapped up their seventh title in a row. It's showing how uncompetitive that league is. Aberdeen have pulled a bit clear of Rangers, and Hibs have caught up to Rangers, so Rangers could actually finish fourth. It's well within the realms of possibility Rangers could slip to fourth next weekend. I haven't played a FIFA for a long time, any of the FIFA games for a couple of years. They're all pretty much the same to me, if I'm honest. They're not my favourite game series. I think I've got bored of the EA Sports games. They're all basically generically the same game. Some of the later FIFAs are really, really bad. I haven't played or owned a FIFA for a long, long time. Very long time. About 10 years. I just went off it a long time ago. It's an expensive waste of money, really, because unlike this, I mean, what games have I got here? I've actually only owned 5 Xbox games at the moment. I own Call of Duty, GTA, and I've got a couple on download, which I've downloaded off the Xbox store into my Xbox. I own 5 games on Xbox. I haven't bought a FIFA for a very, very long time. very very long time, and I don't intend to buy any now. I don't like the online, the HUT. I don't like EA Sports Online. It's crap. Um, it's all right gameplay, I suppose, but it's nothing special. It's nothing I would say is special. Um, I haven't enjoyed an EA Sports game in years. The quality level is getting worse and worse and worse. The 2K series is half decent, but even then, they're not great either. So I don't know what they plan to do to change the series up a little bit, but the quality level is just not great. And they're really overpriced, and they're just it's just not good enough for a company of EA's size to have such poor quality product. But anyway, um, but it is what it is. Let's see what's going on the old God. But yeah, no, I'm just double checking a few things on the old internet there. Not much going on. Um, let's get out of that. But yeah, no, there's so many things wrong with sports games on games consoles. They've gone down in quality over the years. They were better when they were more simple. They were more fun. 10, 15 years ago, I've still got some of my original PlayStation ones. I find them far more fun than the ones we have now. Um, FIFA 12 was the last FIFA that we were into. Um, yeah, because he obviously slipped out of the top levels of Scottish football for a long period of time. You wouldn't be in there, Football Manager, you can have more clubs and a better database. Um, FIFA is very limited in the database they have. They only have certain overseas teams that are outside of the main European leagues. Um, and if I'm brutally honest, it's it's not a great quality of game anymore. But I do have some of my original PlayStation from the late '90s games. I still have them floating around, and I still enjoy getting them out and playing them. Just for the fact that I used to play them day in day out for years as a kid. I still play them. But I don't have no sports games on my current Xbox. I sold my NHL 18 and my UFC 2 a long time ago. They just never did it for me. The NHL games, the online is terrible, and they just don't do it for me. The EA Sports franchise in the EA Games company, that subsection is shocking, and I don't think I'm going to buy one. I don't think I'm going to buy any next year. Um, but back to Rangers, 5-0. I mean, I don't know what you make of the Gerrard rumours linking Gerrard to the manager's job in the summer. Um, he's done very good things with the youth setup at Liverpool, and he's obviously done a lot of scouting of other youth players around England. So maybe you get an influx of young, up and coming, talented young players who want to get some game time and some first team experience. If he does get the job, he's a very competitive individual when it comes to as a player, and he's done very well as a youth coach. So I would hope he would have originally taken a coaching job in England in the lower leagues. That hasn't been the case. If this goes ahead with taking on, if he does get the Rangers job, which is looking very likely that he will. And of course, you've got the old firm against Celtic, and you've got to play Hibs and Hearts and Aberdeen. Those games are pressure cookers, and will his lack of experience count against him? But we'll have to see how he does. I mean, we have to give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to his first managerial job, wherever it may be. And we'll have to see how it goes. Another Scottish footballing story I picked up on was Brechin City not winning a single game this season. They only had 5 draws. I don't know if another team has ever done that badly before. So I'll be very interested to hear what you guys have. Like if you know of another team that has been that shocking. But Brecon City only getting 5 draws in the whole league season. That was really interesting. I found that quite funny. There's been a few other bits and pieces going on in sport. Yeah, no, I know Ancona in the Serie A in 2003-2004 season got a win and 2 draws and got 5 points, but at least they got a win in their regular season. I've never come across a team that, in football at least, that has never won a game in a season and gone on a whole season without winning. I've seen it in ice hockey this year. In the ice hockey that I follow, the Cardiff Fire went a whole season without winning a game, but I've never seen it in football. So there's got to be some other examples of other sports or other leagues where a team has gone a whole season without a win. There has to be. It cannot be Brecon City. But I've done a video on that, so feel free to watch it. I mean, I'm open to hearing on if there are any other examples of a professional sports team that has gone a whole season without winning a game in football. Because apart from the Cleveland Browns, I know they're a team in American football, but I haven't won a game for 2 years. But I'll be very interested to see if there's another professional football team anywhere in the world that has gone a whole season without a win. That made me chuckle. I feel sorry for the Brecon players and the fan base in Brecon. Obviously, I don't think they planned to have such a bad season in the championship. I know they got promoted. I think it was obviously a step too far for that squad of players, but I do feel sorry for them because they've clearly got 5 draws. They're not like useless. They can compete. It's just some of their defeats have been pretty heavy, and I think the morale just went. But I've never come across a football team that bad, and I've been watching football for donkey's years. Never come across a team that bad. So I might have to do my research on like the worst records in football. Obviously, another footballing story. Chris Coleman's lost his job today. So that's interesting. So if you're a Sunderland fan, yeah, they've gone through yet another manager this season. They've been on their 3rd appointment. So that's pretty telling. There is a lot happening at the moment. A lot happening. We had to migrate rooms because the internet connection is just not good enough. So that's why we're in here. we changed rooms. But no, I'm interested to see what else you want to ask me about because now the British ice hockey season's over, and the international team did really well yesterday. They won their international group. They've got promoted up to the top tier of international hockey for the first time in 25 years with a last minute goal. Yes, Macclesfield are going up to League Two. Yes, they are going up. There's a lot of movement in the English league system at the moment. There's a lot going on, and there's still teams that can get promoted or relegated from various leagues and the non-league as well. Accrington are now champions of League Two, so they're going to League One. There's, I think it's Barnet and Morecambe. There's enough games for those two. There's 2 games left in the League Two season, so Barnet or Morecambe could stay up or go down. There's a lot of movement happening. So we have to see what happens and what occurs with in the next couple of games in English football. I know the Scottish League season finishes before the English League season. I think I'm correct in that. We have to see what happens. It's also interesting leading into obviously the World Cup in a month and a half's time or whatever, however many days it is. I think it's 46 days to the World Cup or something. It's very interesting as we go into this World Cup. There's some friendlies coming up. There's still competitive games to play. Players are getting injured, like Oxlade-Chamberlain's got injured. So the next couple of weeks are going to be very telling on World Cup squads. Very telling. And it'll be very interesting to see if over the next couple of weeks any more players get injured or suspended, how that will affect selection policy for national coaches, including Gareth Southgate, for the World Cup, and who gets taken to the World Cup and he gets left behind. Now, Oxlade-Chamberlain he's out for a long time. He's got a really bad knee injury. He's not going to be playing for a while. There are a few other players floating around who are trying to put their hands up for selection for national sides, and there's some other players who their form has wobbled. So we have to see. But no, yeah, Macclesfield are on the way up. And we'll have to see like what happens going forward in the next couple of weeks. There's still games to play in some leagues, and look at Sunderland. They're back-to-back relegation, so the next season they're in League One. And I did a video on the Chris Coleman sacking. Sunderland's best bet is if they get promoted straight away from League One back in the Championship within a season. If they have a long protracted stay in League One, their financial situation will get worse, and they could slip down to League Two. So Sunderland have to be very, very careful about how they go about this new ownership group with the debt they have, and with the position they're going to find themselves in. They've got to reduce their wage bill. They've got to either sell some players, release some players, and then have a look at various other options to prepare themselves for League One. Celtic hammered Rangers today, and that's their 7th title in a row. They're 10 points clear of Aberdeen, who are 3 points clear of Rangers and Hibernian. Hibs are equal on points with Rangers now. It's just goal difference. Rangers could slip to 4th in the Scottish Premier League. There is still room in there for Hibs to completely overtake Rangers. Rangers have lost 2 big games against Celtic in a row in the space of like a week. And the issue is it's the playing group. Is Graham Murty getting the support from the board and the chairman, because there's been rumours he's been undermined. There's Kenny Miller's suspension, and the fact that Steven Gerrard is linked with replacing Graham Murty as manager. So that's happening in Scotland. Celtic are going for a domestic treble, which looks highly likely, and we can discuss Scottish football as long as we want. We've discussed Brecon City and how they went the whole season without a win. They got 5 points. Obviously, Sunderland, we were just talking about Sunderland and what's happened with Sunderland, with the fact that they've sacked Chris Coleman, the new ownership group's taken over today. And what does that mean for the Black Cats in what will be League One next season? That's going to be interesting to see how they adapt to 3rd-tier football in England. I disagree. Celtic are the richest club in Scotland. They actually have financial stability. So, they can't always be at the top, and they won't be. The fact that Hibs are now challenging Rangers for 3rd and Aberdeen are okay. They're 10 points behind, but they're a little bit closer than they were last year. I think the gap is closing between Celtic and the rest. What Scottish football needs is Steven Gerrard. If he gets involved, if Steven Gerrard does take the Rangers job, that will attract more interest to the Scottish League, because Steven Gerrard is a big name in football. And Scottish football needs investment in other clubs apart from Celtic. So Celtic will not always be the top club in Scotland, but at the moment they are. In the 80s, Aberdeen challenged the Rangers Celtic domination of Scottish football and succeeded for a period of time. The thing is, Scottish football's been very uncompetitive for a very long time, and it needs investment into other clubs such as Hibs, Hearts, Motherwell, Aberdeen. They need to have. Aberdeen's got a good financial stir. I'm not sure it's the right move for Gerrard, because he hasn't coached outside youth level. He's a very good youth coach. He's probably, if he has been offered this job, he's probably discussing with other Premier League and Championship managers, can I have some of your youth players on cheap contracts if I get this job? Can I sign some of these players on loans or on transfers? Um, he's going to bring a lot of interest to the Scottish League. If he does get this job, that is going to create a lot of interest because he's very popular in the US where there's a lot of money, and it will create interest. But I don't think he's ready simply because he hasn't cut his teeth at any level in English football as a manager. A lot of ex-players are when they play in English football, they are coaching in English football. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank is a foreigner. He has coached in English football to some level of success and failure. I think it's interesting, but if Rangers are that desperate, because they've already basically treated Graham Murphy like crap, they've not given him any real backing. The board and the chairman haven't really supported Graham Murphy, if I'm honest, from what I'm hearing and what I read online. And Pedro Caxahina, if that's how I pronounce his name. Rangers need some stability with the manager for a couple of years. Even if they come second every year, they need to give faith with the manager to implement his culture and his system on that club. And they need investment and they need some stability. And if stability means they finish second or third every season, but they're stable, they give faith with the manager, allow him to develop through the youth system and pick up some youth players maybe from the English league system and develop them and give them some game time. That could be a solution. But Scottish football needs investment outside Celtic. Other clubs need to have money pumped into them and need to be invested in, and that is the issue. I don't think Gerrard should take this job up, but it's looking very likely that he is going to be your next manager, whether it's right or wrong, or whether he's ready or not. And we'll have to see what happens from there. But if it can spark interest in Scottish football from outside Scotland and investment, it doesn't matter if he's good or bad because he's a big name guy now. Because he's very popular in the US, and the US is where a lot of money is, and a lot of Americans and English clubs. So that could be a positive side effect of getting Gerrard into Scottish football. It could be. I'm not sure what their relationship was when Gerrard was playing under him at Liverpool. I'm not sure on the relationship between Steven Gerrard and Rodgers, Brendan Rodgers. I'm not sure what their relationship was. So that could be very, very interesting. But we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, Scottish football has dominated this live stream so far. But if you've got an ex-player who's becoming a coach and his ex-coach is coaching in the same league, that is a very interesting dynamic, because when Sir Alex Ferguson was at Man United, a lot of his ex-players coached and managed teams against him. And it was very interesting seeing the handshakes and seeing how they were speaking, like Paul Ince, Mark Hughes, a few others flying around who played under Fergie, who managed teams against him in the Premier League. There's a lot of them, both from his days at Aberdeen and his days at Man United. There was a lot of Gordon Strachan. All these managers were managed by Sir Alex Ferguson during his tenure in Scottish and English football. And it was interesting seeing how they reacted on the touchline and the post-match handshakes and how their body language was. The Gerrard Rodgers, we shall see if that becomes a rivalry between the two men, let alone the club's rivalry, if the two men get into a rivalry. But we have to wait and see. Honestly, we have to. From what I'm hearing, what I'm reading, and what I've looked very well in the youth setup at Liverpool, developing players, coaching them, and his record at youth level as a coach is very, very good since he's retired in the last couple of years. But we have to see, really, if the appointment is a good appointment for Rangers. Now, Rangers need some stability, if I'm honest, and they need investment. Do I think they can do 10? Aberdeen have closed the gap somewhat. They're only 10 points behind this season. They were further behind last season. Celtic are starting to slow down. It's plausible. It is doable. But I would have to say, in most leagues, defending your title is very, very hard. And I think Celtic are starting to show signs that they're not as good as they were last season and the season before. I think they've had a very easy run of it. It's getting harder for them. They could have won the league about a month ago. They've only won it this weekend. So they really get their foot off the gas. They are showing signs that they're not as good as they were last year. It's going to be harder for them, especially with the fact that Hibs are now challenging for third spot and they're only 3 points behind Aberdeen. That second, third, fourth battle is exceptionally tight, and they're not in real terms. They're actually closer to Celtic than Man City and Man United are. Man United are further behind Man City than Aberdeen are behind Celtic. So I'm seeing that gap closing. If they can win 10 in a row, that would be insane. And it would be a shame. It would actually, I think Scottish football will be worse off if Celtic win 10 in a row. That's the fear I have. If Celtic continue to win the league, Scottish football actually gets worse. It needs an Aberdeen or a Hibs or a Hearts or a Rangers to be within a couple of points and really push them to, let's say, the last game of the season and really give them a good go at it. And we shall see. If they do win 10 in a row, that I think actually weakens Scottish football. It's an interesting argument to have. But Rangers did it 9 in a row, and that's at the time when Scottish football was declining. Scottish football's been in a mess since 1998, if not before. I honestly don't know what the future holds for Scottish football. So I honestly don't know. The Gerrard story is creating a lot of interest, and this comes on the same day that they lose 5-0 to Celtic. I think if there is all this speculation around Gerrard, that's not helping Graham Murty and his group of players and what they're trying to do now. So we just have to see. There's a lot of other stuff going on in sport. It's not just Scottish football that but I think with the way Rangers have been for the last 10+ years, we knew about they had some financial issues going into the collapse of Setanta and the collapse of Gretna FC. The aftermath of them sticking around for a couple more seasons in the Premier League, and then they got really into financial difficulty, and they've ended up where they are now on a very long road back from the Scottish League Two to where they are now. It's a tough one. Graham Murty, as a player, was a very good, decent player. I've had the privilege of watching Graham Murty play for Reading many times, and this is when he was at his best, and this is 10+ years ago. But I've had the privilege of watching Graham Murty play, and he was a very solid player, and he was a very clean player. Actually, surprisingly, he wasn't a dirty player. As a manager, I think again, it's a point. It's like the Sunderland job. We've been discussing Sunderland on this live stream as well. And Sunderland, they going through managers a lot, no stability. I think he was just thrown in there. The issues with the Kenny Miller suspension, and the aftermath of that cup semi-final defeat to Celtic as well. We will have to, it's a very difficult job at the moment. The Rangers job. There's no managerial stability. Financially, there's issues. I've heard rumours of further financial difficulties for Rangers this year. Whether they are proven or not, I don't know. But I've heard the odd murmuring that there is more money problems than there should be. So off the field, Rangers still has issues. Murty, he's been thrown into. If he is a Celtic fan, it shouldn't really matter because what's funny is Stephen Gerrard was born an Everton fan. So was Jamie Carragher. They're Everton fans, yet they played most of their. Well, Carragher played his entire career for Liverpool, and Gerrard played most of his career for Liverpool. It shouldn't matter what team you actually support as a supporter, but as a professional, it's his job to make this Rangers side as good as possible. He was thrown in on a temporary basis midway through the season. They had a real iffy start to the season. They've never really recovered from it. The Rangers head job at the moment, head coach job, is not a job I don't think any manager really wants because they're not given any time and they're not even given the funds to try and repair the squad and improve the squad because there's the money issues still off the field that are still going on 10 years after we were made aware they had money problems. And this all comes back to players' wages, agents' fees, and there's a few other bits and pieces we could discuss. I mean, it doesn't matter what sport you follow, costs and the running costs and the wages and salaries of your players and their agents are a massive drain on any sporting team, club, franchise, whatever league you look at. And players' wages are a big hot topic at the moment, and in football especially. You've got to look at some. Go back to Sunderland. They've been relegated from the Championship. There's still games to play, but they're going to be playing in League One next season, and they've got players on 80 grand a week. They didn't adapt to life very well in the Championship. They've gone straight through the Championship like a sieve, and they're going to be playing in League One next season, and they have £500 million worth of debt. So Sunderland is a prime example of players being overpaid, not adapting to a different league and a different style of play, and they've sacked just another manager, and there's uncertainty about the future direction of the club, and fans are staying away. That's a prime example of players being overpaid. They're not putting the effort in. It's the same with Rangers. The players are overpaid, and they're not putting the effort in. Whether they agree or disagree with Graham Murty's selection, they should be on that training pitch, breaking their backs to get back in the side. So I'll see you later. So sometimes dropping a player can actually be good for the player. The way that Kenny Miller and I forget the club captain's name at Rangers reacted and how they're not going to play for Rangers ever again, that says something to me about the culture of that football club behind the scenes. That does say something to me. Because I've seen teams that are really struggling at times, like really struggling, yet the fans keep turning up and the players are still putting the effort in. It doesn't matter what sport it is, the players are still putting the effort in and trying hard, even if they're getting battered 4-5-0. There, you can see they're trying and they're just outclassed, and it's just not working. But they're giving it a go. From what I've seen from some teams this season, though, the effort isn't there and the willingness isn't there. And there's a reason why Celtic are better than Rangers. Partly they have more money to spend, but partly it's the effort put in by the players. And it's the energy levels put in. So I look at West Brom and they're suddenly playing for more when they weren't playing for Pardew or Pulis. And they've left it too little too late. Stoke, they're just not performing. And Paul Lambert isn't a very good manager, and he's basically telling players not to report to training, such as Berahino. Key players that could get them out of the situation they're in, he said, I'm not going to select you. You're done. So I can see him getting sacked at the end of the season. But Southampton showed that they can get a win. So the bottom end of the Premier League is getting really tight and congested in England. But I've noticed certain players or certain teams aren't putting the effort in where some of their opposition and some of their opponents are. And I don't mind if my team loses when I go to my ice hockey or I'm watching a match on TV. I don't mind, if the team that I support are putting the effort in. If they lose and they put a shift in, and you can see they put 110% in, and all the players are absolutely shattered, and you can tell they've put their heart and soul into it, I will support that. Rangers do have money problems. I don't know whether they fixed the books or they overspent or whatever it was, but they got into difficulty financially and they ended up where they were in Scottish League 2, and they had to reform, and they basically had to battle their way through the Scottish League system back to the Premiership, and it hasn't really clicked. And it's the same with Hibs and Hearts. Both of them got relegated and were out of the Premiership for a while in Scotland. So Scottish football has a problem. And it comes down to several things, and we've discussed it a lot on live streams on this channel and questions that have been asked. And it comes down to the lack of competitiveness in the league, the lack of money and the lack of investment, and the fact that the Scottish FA don't seem to have a long term plan for developing players. They don't have a long term plan for growing the game, and the TV deal isn't good enough. Rangers did, I think, cook the books. I think they did fiddle their books and hide losses and were reporting profits, and they were avoiding tax as well. Partly because the owners were crooks. It's not the players' fault, and it's not the fans' fault. The club is where it is. The fault with Rangers was with the ownership group. They were breaking the law. They were fiddling the tax book, um, and then they were hiding the fact that they were trying to avoid tax because they were actually losing money. So the average Joe who works in the club shop, works at Ibrox, the backroom staff, the management team, they were doing what they were doing, and they weren't aware of what the ownership were doing, which is having a lasting effect now. There are still issues to do with the time the previous ownership group before 2008 were in charge. You have to go back over a decade, and it's in the public. It is in the public consciousness. It is in the public domain. You can get a freedom of information request. Uh, there was a lot going on. Celtic have had money problems in the past as well. It's not just a Rangers thing. Um, there are things going on in football that are non-transparent, and they're not the only club to breach either, spending rules, financial fair play, whatever it may be, or fiddle their taxes or whatever it may be. That happens in English football. It's happening in European football. It happens in South American football. Just Rangers is a very, very good example of a badly managed team, badly owned, badly financially managed, and the Scottish FA didn't do enough. It's the same with the English FA, the FA in general. The governing bodies of the sport and the governing bodies of the leagues know this stuff that is going on. Whether they're cooking the books or they've run into financial difficulty by overspending like Celtic did. Rangers and Celtic are two different things, but both have financial difficulties. The various governing bodies of the leagues, be it the Scottish FA or the FA in England or UEFA, they're not regulating the game properly. They are allowing that. I understand what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying, but the governing bodies of the sport are allowing a situation whereby clubs are being allowed to be badly run. There was a thing on Twitter with to do with the English Football League and how English fans have had enough of their clubs being badly run. It was they put a billboard outside the English Football League headquarters, and it was basically two fingers to the Football League and the Premier League for allowing clubs to be badly run, criminality to take place, criminals to buy clubs, and I've listed them off before, asset stripping, and it's not just Rangers. Loads of clubs have done it. It's not the players' fault. It's not the manager's fault. It's not the fans' fault. It's the owners. And in other sports, when a team hits financial difficulties, the league will come in and buy that team, hold it for years, stabilise the situation, and find a buyer. The FA could do this, and the Scottish FA and the Welsh FA, whatever FA it may be, whatever football association it may be, they could step in and go, right, we're taking this club off your hands and we're going to find a buyer for it. We're going to restructure the finances and we're going to keep the team performing. But what they do, instead of helping the club out and supporting the fans and the players and the decent people who go and pay and watch the game, the players who are playing on the pitch, they allow these crooked, really bad owners to either badly run a club, overspend, cook the books, avoid tax, launder money, whatever it may be, and then they punish the players and the fans. They don't help the club. They allow the club to get in a bad place and then punish it. It's not the club's fault. It's the owner's fault. And this is an issue I have with the FA. They're badly, the English FA, the Scottish FA, UEFA, FIFA, whatever governing body it is. They're not governing the game properly. They're not running the game properly. They're not transparent enough. And now they're selling. And now the FA is trying to sell Wembley to a foreigner, which I think is wrong. If they were going to sell it, at least sell it to a British owner, please, not a foreigner, because I can see that going badly, but I've done videos on that. I'll give my opinion on that as well. In my eyes, football as a sport is very badly run, and as a sport being badly run, the teams will be badly run. If you know your governing body is not running the game properly, you're going to get away with cooking the books or allowing yourself to really get into financial difficulty because the precedent has been set by the governing body. Um, I've argued. I've argued. I don't know about you guys and what you guys feel on this. Having a salary cap in European football. This may alleviate some of the problems that we have in Scottish football or in English football with certain clubs having financial difficulties. If we were to have a salary cap, would that not reduce costs? Because at the moment, ticket prices are going through the roof. Players' wages are disgusting in their value, and some of these players' wages are far too high, and I find that disgusting. Agents' fees, they're not transparent. Of course they won't. They're greedy. But here's the thing: I had someone write a comment on one of my videos about look how the foreign money is done really well for the British game, and I went, really? So that's why all these foreign owners who own these clubs have foreign managers, loads of foreign players. The players' wages are in the hundreds of thousands a week, and the ticket price is nearly £100 for a decent ticket, and it's going up. I think the FA has to impose it upon them. It's going to get to a crisis point where very few clubs are actually not in debt. It's going to get to the point where the bubble will burst and we're going to have a crisis where clubs will be going out of business left, right, and centre. Established clubs, we're talking big teams. We're not talking your Accrington Stanleys. We're talking Rangers across the board, not just in England or Scotland, but in Europe as well and South America. It is going to get to a point in professional football where big, historically established, we're talking Boca Juniors, Juventus, Real Madrid. It will get to a point where a club that big collapses if there isn't a salary cap. That's my personal view on it. I know they won't agree to it because they won't. But the FA doesn't do anything anyway. They're trying to sell Wembley because they're broke, and it's a short-sighted, measure. I don't know where this. I mean, what worries me is in the last 10, 11 years, we've had a financial crisis and a credit crunch. Yet footballers' wages have gone up 250% at some clubs per week. The contracts they've signed, the transfer market inflation, the ticket price inflation. So how football, and I am going for football here, has done so well where other sports are struggling to get by. I mean, look at the Great Britain ice hockey team, the UK ice hockey team. They get promoted to the top tier of international ice hockey. Funding is negligible. Funding is crap. Rinks are falling down. Rinks are being closed. There's no investment. Yeah, football is the wages are going up and up. Ticket prices have gone through the roof. And the argument is all this foreign money has really helped English football. It's really helped the league. Yeah, because these foreign owners charge more and more money for tickets. So the only people it's helped is the rich owners and lining their pockets. It's a cash cow for them. And the only way we're going to get changed is if fans start staying away. Empty seats look really shit for TV. Really shit. And clubs still technically rely a little bit on gate revenue. But here's the thing. The current TV deal that's now in place, not the one that's going to be coming in, but the current one, they could have let us in for free for the entire duration of that TV deal package. All the clubs in the Premiership and the Championship could let us in for free. The thing is, some clubs want to have a bigger share of the profits over some of the other clubs, and so some clubs will actually suffer. And the FA, it got rejected in the end. And the FA won't do anything. They won't. The FA are selling out Wembley to a foreigner, right? And everyone's saying, I've heard reports from ESPN. Now, ESPN is going to be biased in favour of the American because it's an American network, saying ticket prices will fall. No, they fucking won't. He's promised to keep Club Wembley. He's only paying 500 million for the stadium and 300 million for Club Wembley. So when the FA have
made a loss on the stadium of about 300 million, and that's before the interest payments because they've still got to pay it off. The FA is a gutless organisation that has sold out the spirit of the game, has allowed the Premier League to basically be an organisation unto itself. The Premier League gives the FA two fingers. The English Football League is going to go the same way. And the reason why the Premier League came about was there was a disagreement with the English Football League and the FA. And a number of clubs didn't really want to sign up to the FA's rules anymore. And they formed their own league in protest. And the FA did nothing to stop it. They could have banished the founders of the Premier League out of the FA organisation. They could have banned them from taking part in the League Cup and the FA Cup. And they buckled because these were the big clubs, these were the money clubs, and they said, we're not happy with this, we're going to make ourselves as rich as fucking possible. And the FA didn't stand up to some of its members going against FA rules, hence the Premier League started. And then another issue is Rupert Murdoch has a lot of say in sport in this country and around the world because of his TV networks and his TV sports rights. When Rupert Murdoch dies, good God, we're fucked. Oh yeah, when Rupert Murdoch does decide to kick the bucket because he's getting on, sport around the world is in serious trouble. Serious trouble because sport has become too reliant on Sky Sports, Fox, etc., etc. His TV networks, sport has become far too reliant on those networks for revenue, and they've neglected us, the fans. We used to be the revenue makers for them. Now it's TV rights to be sold abroad. But yeah, no, debt in football is insane. An issue that keeps coming up is the accountability and the transparency of agencies and agents. That's come up a hell of a lot over the last couple of years. That's been in discussion, and that's something else that needs to be looked at is the accountability and the transparency of the agents, the companies and the individuals. So the agencies or the agents representing players or players. That's another issue that the FA hasn't tackled very well, and other leagues and other sports haven't tackled very well either. That's something to be looked at because these agents are very unaccountable, and an agency, a sports agency, might not only just have football players, but they might have rugby players, people involved in motorsport, so racing car drivers, MotoGP riders. He might have basketball players, ice hockey players, American football. Some of these sports agencies might have about 30 different sports on their books, and they're not accountable to anyone. But no, some interesting topics brought up, and there are some interesting things we've discussed already, and most of it's to do with Scottish football for once. But no, there's other things going on, like the F1. About a third of the race was behind the safety car, and F1's a sport that's got a lot of problems as well going forward, long term. Again, because the big teams want to make as much money as possible and make sure the small teams fail. That's F1's politics. Is Ferrari and Mercedes are like, oh no, we have to share revenues from the TV deal. We don't want to do that. Oh, we have to abide by new regulations. No, we don't want to do that. And the FIA and the F1 organisation is toothless to stop them. They haven't got the guts. There's a lot of things going on in sport that aren't good right now, and the few good things that are happening are being overshadowed by the shit. Honestly. So it is what it is. A lot of good things are happening in sport at the moment, and it's just not getting the coverage. Like, thankfully, I know it was on the red button, but the BBC did have both Champions League women's semi-finals on, and it was on free to air, and it was easily accessible. Okay, Man City ladies lost, and Chelsea ladies lost their semi-finals, but at least it was on free to air TV, and it was accessible. The GB men's ice hockey, if you can get free sports on your preview box on HD, it was. It was available if you had free sports. The BBC misreported it, saying it was quarters, not periods, because they don't understand ice hockey, and made a hash of their article, and limited coverage on 5 Live. A great achievement by the men's British ice hockey team. Fucking shocking coverage. Again, the Women's Champions League semi-finals, red button only. I mean, come on, these are two very good teams in English women's football trying to go for the Women's Champions League. Oh, it's on the red button, and there's no studio where they can debate the pros and cons of how the teams are playing. Again, really shit coverage. Shows how, obsessed the British media is with the English Premier League, and the obsession with it and pay-per-view sport is vile. So some good sporting stories are not getting the coverage they should. And yes, Premier Sports have realised that ice hockey is a big enough market in this country for people to watch. And they came up with the Free Sports channel in August. They launched it. Okay, you need an HD box, so I've got to get a new freebie box to actually have it installed. But at least it's a step in the right direction, and a pay-per-view sports company has realised we might as well have a free-to-air sports channel as well, because we can attract more viewers and we can get, more ads shown, more viewership. It's a step in the right direction, but at the same time, again, really badly advertised. And and the Great British achievement and the Italian achievement. Well, bear in mind, Italy and Great Britain are now in the top tier of men's ice hockey for next year's World Championships. The achievement of those two countries is not to be taken lightly, considering Slovenia were at the last Olympics. So, considering that Slovenians qualified for the Olympics and we beat them, and we beat the host Hungary, and we were 2-0 down, and everyone was panicking, and we get a last 15 seconds left on the clock, we equalise, and then take it to overtime. That's something we should invest in. And unfortunately, with what's happening at Basingstoke, what's happened on the Isle of Wight with their rink going, what's happened with Manchester going out of business several times, and that says it all. Not football, but it will do. That's just absolutely damning of the way the BBC and the British media covers sport in this country. It's football, maybe a bit of rugby and a bit of cricket, occasionally a bit of motorsport, a bit of cycling. A sport that is a minor sport in terms of the people involved. That statement is a disgrace, and that shows why. That just shows up the BBC for all it is, an absolutely crap organisation that's got a lot of problems. And the BBC used to actually show ice hockey when I was a kid from the Super League. They used to show it on the TV live, and then they stopped. They sold out, and they left British ice hockey right up the shitter. Hello, Abdul. I understand you've got a lot of questions for me, so feel free to ask away. League One and League Two, because there are some big clubs in League One and League Two that can draw fans, and there are some big fan bases in the lower leagues. Pittsburgh losing 2-0. Oh, please tell me that's true. But they were losing 2-0 in the first game. They won 3-2. Washington have a habit in the playoffs of getting to the second round and then falling apart. Nashville, apart from when they got to the final last year, they also have a habit of getting to the playoffs and then falling apart. Yes, I would hope that the IHF World Championships does get shown, because Great Britain are now into the top tier for the first time since 1994. If the BBC does not show that, or any free to air network doesn't show that, will be a disgrace. If that was rugby union, rugby league, football, it gets shown. It's a tournament. Whether England are in it or Great Britain are in it or not, they show that tournament. But the BBC has shown itself to be incapable of gaining sports rights. They're more than happy to give up bidding and go, oh no, we're not going to bid anymore. We pay our license fee. We fund this organisation. and their coverage of some sports has been absolutely shoddy. And Sky and BT haven't helped the situation and have made it worse. And now, unfortunately, certain sports and certain leagues are far, far too dependent on pay-per-view TV money, which will run out at some point because pay-per-view TV is a very, very, very flawed concept. Yeah, the BBC, they lost the dots. They didn't show a willingness to fight for it. That is a disgrace. They lost the first 2 days of Augusta. The third day at Augusta is only on the red button, and the final day is on the red button and BBC Two. They lost the Open. That was a disgrace. I mean, I don't mind watching a bit of golf. I actually find it a bit therapeutic sometimes watching golf. If I'm having a bit of a rough time and I can't sleep, I used to watch the golf. I used to happily sit up and watch the Masters. I used to love watching the Masters when I was a kid. If I was having issues I couldn't sleep, I would watch the golf. I found it relaxing. BBC, gutless. Gutless. They couldn't even keep hold of the F1 rights. They're gutless. People, I'm assuming most of us are in the 18 to 34 age group on this channel. I'm assuming I've looked at my data, and most people are about between the ages of 18 and 30 who watch my channel. That age group, the 18-30 club, are not paying for subscription TV anymore. They're just turning off it. That includes Amazon Prime and Now TV. They're not paying for pay-per-view TV. They refuse. That's why VPNs are popping up, and that's why the big TV companies are trying all these legal ways to shut these VPNs and live streams down. They're panicking. Free-to-air TV is the way to go. The TV license is an outdated concept, and that needs to change. The BBC has to go to a commercial free-to-air station, otherwise it will fail. We do pay too much, but Sky Sports, if you have a Sky package and you don't have Sky Sports and you want to unlock it for the day, it's $7.99 a day. So if you work out at $7.99 a day, that works out at £3,000 a year thereabouts. BT Sport is actually more expensive and it's shitter. I think it's $10.99 a day. Premier Sports, you can only get it if it's on the Skybox, and then you have to pay to have that unlocked, which costs money. I think that's £50 a month or something. It's stupid. It's far, far too much. And bearing in mind, all these sports teams are covered in sponsors. And then when you pay for the pay-per-view sports, you're thinking, oh, but there'll be no ads. There's actually more ads on pay-per-view TV than on free-to-air. There's actually more advertising bombarded in your face. So I don't know how much money Sky are making, but it's a flawed thing because less and less people are willing to pay for subscription TV. They're just not willing to pay for pay-per-view sport. I'm not a big fan of the Penguins. No, I never have been. I've never been a fan of the Penguins, even when they were crap. I've not been a big fan of the Penguins. I'm not a big fan of any team in the Eastern Conference, really. My team plays in the West. I'm a Jets fan. I supported the original Jets back in the early '90s when I was a kid. I support the Coyotes as well because they are the original Jets franchise. I've never been a Penguins fan. I don't like the Flyers. I don't like the Capitals. I don't like the Rangers, the Islanders. I don't like the Eastern Conference. There's a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference. I just don't feel that connection where I enjoy watching their style of play. I never have. I don't know what it is. I've just never really clicked and enjoyed the style of play they play. I don't feel. I don't know. I prefer watching Western Conference teams. They're a little bit more physical, a bit more ram bam. Thank you. They're a bit more gritty. I like a bit more of a physical, toe to toe, rough 'em up kind of style of hockey than the Western Conference is a bit more physical. They're more physical teams. They're bigger teams. They're more powerful. I like that style of hockey more. It's a personal preference. It wasn't always the case. It used to be the Eastern Conference that was the big bash 'em whack 'em conference. But it's a personal thing. I've never really liked the Penguins. I've never liked the Flyers. I think no, Boston have the worst fans. The Boston Bruins have the worst fans. The Boston Bruins fans, pretty visceral bunch. Chicago have had a bit of bad rep lately as well. But yeah, going to where the TV license goes to, it goes into executives' pockets. The government's even admitted that the TV license is out. the government's admitted that the TV license is an outdated concept and there needs to be a review on it. Steve Smith or David Warner? I think Steve Smith. If we can get onto the cricket one, because this is the first question on cricket we've had in the live stream in an hour. Most of it was football based, and I got a bit bored of doing just football because it just made me want to gouge my eyes out. I got to the point where I've had enough to talk about football. Steve Smith. Okay, I think there is still more to come out on this whole this whole affair, this whole scandal in Australian cricket. So there's still more. I think to come out about it. Bullshit. Only 3 players knew. I know a lot of cricketers who play amateur, for the local town cricket club or Berkshire County Cricket Club. There is no way your leadership group weren't fully aware. That's BS. That's flat out crap. Steve Smith, I think, was naive and wasn't mature enough to be captain, but he was made captain, so make that what you will. David Warner, though. No, I think David Warner is actually is the dressing room cancer. He is the cancer in a team. You don't want David Warner. Even though he's an exceptionally talented individual, I think he will completely. He will. I'm not sure David Warner is someone I would want in my team. Steve Smith is an incredible batsman. He can stabilise an innings, or he can explode. He can play T20 very well. He's very good at the short and long formats of the game. But with what's gone on, if I was, because Surrey is my closest professional county cricket club, even though I live in Berkshire. I don't really follow any particular one county in county cricket. I will happily watch a 50-over match, a 4-day county cricket match, T20 match. But if I was a fan of any team and those names were mentioned, I would be a bit cautious because of what's gone on. And I think David Warner is the big one. Steve Smith, I think, can be forgiven and can redeem himself at some point. But David Warner, I think, he's burnt so many bridges and there's so much controversy around him. And he's a lightning rod for various people. That could, if those rumours are true, that could backfire on Surrey badly. That could really unbalance the dressing room. It could really unsettle the players. I don't think the players really need that kind of rumour mill going around because that can be very, very distraction for them. So I don't know where you've heard that story from, but seeing how around the world teams were like, we're not going to sign you to your contract. You're not playing for us this year. I think there's still more to run in the big scheme of things when it comes to the ball tampering saga to do with Sky Sports. Yeah, but that's a Murdoch thing, and Murdoch's Australian, so he's going to try and big up. It's an Australian-owned company. Rupert Murdoch's Australian, and Steve Smith and David Warner are Australian. So you work that one out how you will. You work that one on how you will, because they've still got 11 months on their bans. They're not going to be used to anyone until next year anyway. It doesn't matter if it's IPL, county cricket, Sheffield Shield, international cricket. It doesn't matter what domestic or international competition you think about. They can't. Australia's banned them for a year, and no one wants to touch them. So they can't play in Australian domestic or international cricket, and no other cricketing league wants to touch them at the moment. So I don't know. I mean, they could get picked up by a county cricket side or a West Indian T20 side or whatever domestic first class or T20 league there is about. But considering how it all happened and the aftermath and how they're very quickly dropped by the teams they play for, I don't know. And to be honest, I don't take a lot of faith in Sky Sports anymore, and Sky in general. I really don't have a lot of faith in some of their reporting and some of their presenting, and I take that with a pinch of salt. Of course, they want to get back playing. They are eligible to play for cricket outside Australia anyway. They can still play for cricket outside Australia. They just can't play domestically or internationally for Australia for 12 months. I wouldn't be surprised if their agents have been contacting teams around the world. especially county cricket or cricket in South Africa. I wouldn't be surprised if they've gone anywhere there's a first-class cricket tournament. West Indies, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the UAE. They've got a cricket league in the UAE. I wouldn't be surprised if they have been putting feelers out. And seeing if they can get picked up. Yes, the Aussies are lying. There is no doubt in my mind there is more to this than just the 3 players involved. Hence why the coach has been sacked, and hence why there's a new captain, and hence why other players really their lack of willingness to basically want to have David Warner around says a lot. David Warner is a dressing room cancer. We can discuss those type of players that are hated by their teammates and opponents in equal measure. And David Warner is one of those characters that no one wants to play with. No one, teammate or foe. They don't want to have him around their team anymore. And I don't think he plays professionally ever again. Hello, Ellie May. I think that's how you think. Hi there. Vegas. They did drop a game though at home, and that could be crucial. I think the series will go to 7. And that dropped game 2, could be very, very important considering how they dominated game 1. I'm not gonna say they're definitely going to win, but that drop game is crucial. They dropped a game at home. It's the first game they've lost. It's the first game they've lost in the playoffs. And yeah, in the last round, they got a 4-0 series sweep. They had home ice advantage because they were the top seeded team. San Jose were seeded 3rd in their division. They were seeded 1st, so they have home ice advantage for the first 2 games, and they've dropped one of them. So that could be very, very important. But it's the playoffs. It is real tense time. You don't get shootouts. You don't get, it is unlimited overtime. It really is a different style of play than the regular season. To be honest, even though Washington are 2-0 up in this game, they have a habit of falling apart in the second round. So I'm going to have to go for Pittsburgh, even though I don't want to. The Sharks may have the better players. Here's the thing. The regular season stats say otherwise. And that first game, that hammering they took, say otherwise. Even though they won the second game, it had to go to overtime. And they almost choked that 3-2, away. They are missing Thornton. And Evander Kane was suspended for the last game, so that may have an effect because now he's available for game 3. Does that mean De Boer has to rejig the lines again? Vegas are a solid side, and they are a good side. And it's not that they have a star player. They don't. They have a team of players that all these individuals have bought in, and they are a team. They are a unit that plays for each other. Whereas other teams have that star player, and they don't always play as a united front. It's probably why Washington struggles, because it's the Ovechkin show, and the rest of the team don't support him enough because he is the star player, and they don't give him enough backup when he needs it. Now, I'll be very interested to see if Washington hold on for this win, because Philly showed that they did get 2 very good wins against Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh do have their own problems. Pittsburgh aren't invincible. And Philadelphia, which was a weaker side, managed to get 2 wins out of 6 against them. So they are beatable. It's just, can a team beat them 4 times? Even if the Lions don't get through to the conference final, they have had an amazing season. And yes, I do agree. Couture, Hurtle, Pavelski, and Burns are good. Burns, though, defensively is dodgy. In attack, if you let him shoot and let him pass, he has played as a forward as Brent Burns. Defensively, he's suspect. Pavelski is getting on a little bit now. He's not as young as he was, but he's an outstanding. He's a leader. He's a two-way player. Hurtle and Couture are good. They're on the younger side of things, and they're going to be part of the leadership group going forward for the next 5-10 years. They are good players. Burns, there's a reason why he, has been voted the best defenseman in the league several times. And when he does get on the scoring sheet and he can go on a run, scoring points, assists, and goals, he is a very effective offensive weapon. But defensively, sometimes he can go missing. And in the first game of the series against Vegas, he was cut to pieces. He was a defensive liability, and that is an issue in his game that has never been corrected. He's a more offensive version of PK Subban, but he's also more defensively suspect than PK Subban. He's just a bigger version of PK Subban. Yes, paper is one thing, but then you got perform. And both these two sides had 4-0 sweeps in the first round against two very tough teams to play against, and now it's 1-1 in the series. So they've met their match. It's going to be very physical. It's going to be heated. There's going to be a lot of niggle about it, and they're not going to like each other very much. By the end of it, they're going to hate each other a lot. Winnipeg have a very good chance against Nashville. Pekka Rinne has a habit in the playoffs of having a good series followed by a really bad one, and hence why the Stanley Cup went to Pittsburgh last year is Pekka Rinne. They worked him out very quickly and he fell apart. And in the game we've just had, he got chased out of net. So that's something I'll be watching tonight on the old Twitter and the old live score app. I will be having my eye on the Jets Predators game 2. That's going to be an interesting game too. If Winnipeg can win that, the series could be gone, because Winnipeg at home are almost unbeatable. Nashville at home are almost unbeatable. We've beaten them once, so if Nashville lose game 2, that could be the series. But that's me being an optimistic Jets fan. I mean, Nashville could win and make it interesting, but they've dropped that game at home, which is crucial. Any team that drops a home game in a playoff series is crucial, especially if they had the home ice advantage, which Nashville did and Vegas did. They both dropped a game at home, so that is really important. I think Pittsburgh will go through against Washington. I said that, but yeah, no. All told, these playoffs have been brutal, absolutely brutal, and the refs aren't calling things they would call in the regular season, and that worries me because consistency in refereeing is important, and they are letting some things go that shouldn't be let go. But that's another opinion I have, and I've done videos on refereeing standards before, and I've discussed it before that when the best league in the world in a sport is setting precedent, the lesser leagues in that sport will follow. The team that's higher ranking in seeding. So Nashville will have an extra home game if it goes to 7. That's how they work it out. If you're ranked higher in the seeds, so if you're ranked first overall in the seeding in your division or in your conference, over second, first, and then you play each other. So Winnipeg had home ice against Minnesota because we were ranked higher in seeding, but Nashville are ranked higher than us. So in our second round, Nashville has home ice advantage. That's how it's done. The higher ranked team in the seeding has home ice advantage in a round of the playoffs. So the higher ranked seed will have 4 home games, and the lower rank will have 3. That's why it's called home ice advantage. Although if you have a 4-0 sweep, it means sod all because it means you've lost 2 games at home. That's the basic simple principle of it. So Washington ironically, has home ice advantage. But for some reason, in Game 7, when Washington is the higher ranked seed in a Game 7, they tend to lose. So Washington, somehow, I don't see them getting 4 wins in a row against Pittsburgh. I really don't. I don't see them getting 3 wins in a row, losing one and getting a win in Game 6. I cannot see Washington winning back-to-back games against Pittsburgh. I really can't. I can see them winning a game against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh wins, Washington wins, whatever. But I can't see them winning a series of games against Pittsburgh. Um, even though both sides are not as strong as they were last year, and I don't think either of those sides will win the Stanley Cup. I don't think Pittsburgh will win the Stanley Cup. I don't think Washington will win the Stanley Cup this time around. They need to have a serious look at, okay, it's not Ovechkin's fault that they lose, but why do they keep falling short in round 2? And they might win this one game tonight, yes. I'm not saying they won't win a game against Pittsburgh, not at all. The issue Washington has is they get to the second round and they fall apart. And they haven't been to the Stanley Cup final since, I think, 1998. I think they've been to the Stanley Cup final twice or once in their existence. I think Buffalo's been twice, and I think it's 98 the last time they got to the Stanley Cup final, and they lost 4-1, I think, in that series. I believe it was against Detroit. Washington's history in the playoff, regular season, they have brilliant seasons. Brilliant seasons. Postseason, they tend to fall apart, and it tends to be against Pittsburgh. Although they have fallen apart against other teams, recent since 1991, they've had, I think, 12 series against Pittsburgh. They've won one of them. Pittsburgh have won all the others. And the last 3 times Pittsburgh have won the Stanley Cup, guess who they've met in the playoffs in the second round? Washington. So Pittsburgh has won most of the series they played, and a lot of them do go to 7 games. I'm not saying that Washington can't win games against Pittsburgh, but when it comes to the playoff history between the two sides, they first met in 91, and Washington only won 1 series. Pittsburgh have won like 10 or 11 series, and this is the 3rd year in a row they're meeting. Okay, so they're 3-0 up. Okay, that proves that they can beat Pittsburgh in a one-off game. The issue is they've got to win 4 games. 4 games they've got to win, and they've proven year after year they can't do it, and it is horrific. The only year they beat Pittsburgh was 1994, the year the Rangers won the Stanley Cup. 93, the Islanders knocked them both out. 94 is the only year they have beaten Pittsburgh in the playoffs. That record has to change at some point. They have to get over that hurdle of meeting this team and having a mental block and going, we can't win. It doesn't matter if it's Crosby or Lemieux or neither. It doesn't matter who the star player of Pittsburgh is. They keep losing in the playoffs against them. Regular season's a different thing, but in the playoffs, it's here we go again. Now, if they win this game, they've got to win the next game. They have to win on the road. And that's where I think they're really going to struggle, is winning on the road in Pittsburgh. And because they've lost that first game at home, already nervous. Even though they're winning tonight, it's a one-off game. You've got to think there's a series of 7. It's a first to 4 wins. And they got home ice advantage and they fluffed it in the first game. They were 2-0. They were similar scoreline up and they lost. They were 2-0 up, not 3-0 up, but they were ahead in the third. Pittsburgh were not getting through their defence. Pittsburgh saw that goal. Holtby's head goes down. The defence falls apart and they lose. So, even though you're a Pittsburgh fan, I'm not saying don't support your team. Washington do have a mental block. When they're winning against Pittsburgh, it's going great. But when they let that first goal in, the confidence just goes. And if you look at that third period from the first game, they're 2-0 up. Ovechkin scores, 2-0 up, and then the first Pittsburgh goal goes in, and their heads just drop. The whole team, the mood of the team, the body language, and their confidence goes. And then Holtby falls apart. That's an issue this team has, is they're ahead in the game, they concede, then they start panicking. The 2 games against Columbus they lost as well, same thing happened. They playing against them, goal goes in, they start panicking. So there's got to be some kind of leadership failure there, where they're not someone's got to grab them and go and be a leader either on or off the ice. Grab the players and say, pull it together. You're better than this. And maybe Ovechkin is not made necessarily the player to have that kind of style of, motivating his teammates. He's a great player. Yes, he's the captain, but should he be the captain? Maybe that weighs a bit heavily on him. I don't know. But it's a very interesting. It's an interesting series history, and you've got to look at it and go, Christ, Pittsburgh really do have a mental advantage as well. They know they've got a psychological advantage because of recent history between Ovechkin and Crosby in the playoffs. Even though Ovechkin scored more goals and got more points in the playoffs than Crosby and Malkin, he's a higher scorer. It's the team psychological that they can't beat this team in 7 games. I've seen a few highlight reels, a few bits and pieces on the internet, but without Sky, it's near on impossible. And a lot of the live streams I come across the VPNs keep getting shut down, which is a pain, and it's a bit annoying. But I've been following some of the results as they, come in, and there are a few interesting things going on in the IPL. I think what's made it exceptionally interesting for this year's IPL is yes, the ball tampering, and the fact the amount of Australian players who come down injured as well after that South Africa series, which says to me there's a bit more going on with what happened in South Africa in Cape Town with the ball tampering than we are led to believe. I think Cricket Australia has done a reasonable job at damage limitation when it comes to the media, but at the same time we know they're lying. And it's quite damning when I watched a bit of the Flintoff, Savage and the Ping Pong Guy podcast on the BBC website about the ball tampering, and then they asked Freddie Flintoff, how can you tell if a ball was being deliberately tampered with? And this is about a month ago, and Freddie Flintoff is basically debunks the theory that there's only 3 people involved. He basically says that it's so obvious that whole dressing room would have known, that coaching setup would have known, and it's also very surprising that suddenly Mitchell Starc, the week the IPL starts, injured when he was the bowler the ball was given to that was tampered. It's very interesting that Mitchell Starc has come down here as injured out of that Test series, and is now missing the IPL. Very interesting, very very convenient timing. There's a lot going on. I mean, we discussed this with football earlier in the live stream when you weren't on the live stream. We discussed this with Scottish football and English football and the governing bodies not governing the sport correctly and not supporting teams that do have it difficulty and punishing them when they shouldn't be punished. It's the same with cricket. This 100-ball format the ECB's come up with, they've tried for a decade to kill T20, and now they've come up with an even worse format that's even shorter to kill off the short format of the game. The ICC's got problems. The ICC has burnt bridges with Pakistan, India, Australia. It's burning bridges with England because the ICC is backing T20 and the ECB wants to kill it, which I think is absurd because 11 English players now playing in the IPL that are gaining valuable experience against Indian players and guess what's happening this summer? An Indian Test series. I don't agree with the 100-ball format. It's completely... It's the way the ECB have try to sell it. It's for kids and their mums. It's basically he's aiming for the soccer mum kind of. Only 1 in 5 mothers are stay-at-home mums these days. 4 out of 5 mothers are working. So I don't see how they're trying to pitch it to the wrong people. What TV companies are involved? Who knows? Bear in mind the BBC's got I don't mind T20. I don't mind 50 over. I don't mind Test cricket. The way to save Test cricket is the day-night Test match, plain and simple. Get rid of the old whites and have the brightly coloured uniforms like T20 and 50 over. Simple. That's 2 ways you can save Test cricket. Make it brighter, make it more interesting, a bit less stuffing, a little less formal, and a bit more wham bang in your face. That will get interest. And day-night. Simple. Day-night tests and get rid of the old whites and introduce coloured uniforms for Test cricket. That is how you save it. Simple, plain, very simple little things that the ICC and the ECB and Cricket Australia don't want to fiddle with because they're traditionalists. Those old fogies need to fucking go. No, don't get rid of current domestic cricket. Do not get rid of the first class formats of the game. Really don't, because that's how you learn how to play Test cricket is by playing 4-day first class club cricket. That's how you actually learn how to become a very good Test batsman, Test bowler, Test fielder. The way to save Test cricket, day-night Test matches, they should all be that. That means bad light can't stop play. So if there's a lot of rain delays, you can still play at night when it's cooler and maybe not raining as much. And get rid of the old whites and have coloured uniforms. Looks great on TV. Colour looks brilliant on HD TV. Plain white doesn't look very nice on HD TV. That's two very simple ways to increase the interest in Test cricket. 100-ball format, fuck off. You can't have a 10-ball over with 3 bowlers bowling it. It makes no fucking logical sense unless someone has bowled like 5 no-balls. I mean, come on, seriously, that makes fuck all sense. It's not even in the rules of the game. That's an illegal over. Plain and simple. That is an illegal over. So they have to rewrite the rule book for the 100 ball format of the game. They have to write a new rule book for it. And no other governing body of a national side is agreeing with it. That's going to kill domestic cricket. It's going to completely kill county cricket. It's going to completely kill 50 over form of the game, which is a brilliant form of the game, which I actually love. And they've tried to kill T20 for 10 years. So they've tried to strangle T20 for some reason. So they're going to introduce an even shorter format of the game and aim it at the wrong group of people. What? I don't think stay-at-home mums are interested in fucking cricket. They're interested in making sure their kids have enough to eat, drink. They might, be caring for 3 or 4 kids. They're not really going to be interested in going down to Lords or the Oval or Trent Bridge for an hour and a half. That's the last thing on their minds because that's expensive. Because the ticket price, I bet you will be through the fucking roof. It's a different sport then. It's a completely different sport then. It's very interesting that no other cricketing body, like let's say the West Indies or India or South Africa or any other Test playing nation, has agreed to this. Only the ECB and Andrew Strauss. I think he needs to go from the ECB. I think the ECB needs a complete clear out. I think it needs a complete, restructuring because whoever came up with this idea is on crack. Plain and simple. They've all taken a fuckload of MCAT, fuckload of crack cocaine, some meth. I don't know. They're clearly on drugs because they've completely misread the situation. People love T20 because 6 ball overs, it's just 20 over game. You can get a whole game. You can get 2 games in a day. 2 games in a day you can play at T20. 1 days, that was adopted for the first ever Cricket World Cup. It has worked ever since. No problem with 1 day cricket or 50 over or 40 over cricket. No problem with that. Test matches, again, no problem with that. I love watching a 5-day Test match. I could quite happily watch a 5-day Test match on TV. Problem is on TV with cricket, the whites, get rid of them. You need to change from club whites to brightly coloured, and that will attract people. That will attract people seeing bright colours on TV. It looks better on TV with bright colours. And day-night Test matches, better time for TV audience. You get more people watching them in the evening because no one's at fucking work. And pricing again. Pricing comes up in a sport yet again. It's not just football that ticket prices are going up. Cricket as well. Make it more inclusive. Serious. I mean, I do not understand with the TV deals these sports have that are worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds a year, or depending where you live, dollars, rupees, whatever it may be, billions a year. That they keep raising ticket prices when they've got these lucrative, expensive TV deals. I do not understand why they keep raising frigging prices. And they wonder why there's half-empty stands and half-empty stadiums and half-empty grounds at games at various levels of the game in any sport. And they wonder why there's empty seats at sports venues. Have you seen the pricing? That's not taking into account food and drink, which is extortionate at a professional sports ground. It doesn't matter if it's football, cricket, rugby league, rugby union, ice hockey. Prices for food are too high. I watched your Mike Talks Football. I did watch your little clip that you showed of the Middlesbrough pitch invasion against Millwall. I didn't do a video on that. It's really annoying me. I knew I forgot to do something today. We've had a lot of pitch invasions this season by fans. We've had a lot of fan disturbances the last couple of years in English football as well. That's something else that I think we should talk about. I've got to sort my hair out. My hair's annoying me. Oh, we have had. Oh, that's better. I forgot to drop. That's better. Let's fluff my hair up. That's it. That's better. Woo. That's better. There has, but look, you never really got into cricket. You got taken to a game. It doesn't matter what format, and you actually enjoyed it. That's what it should be about. Is getting people who are not interested in the thing interested. Now, T20 is a great gateway into watching the game. There is still a place for Test cricket, and there's still a place for full one-day domestic and international cricket. There's still a place for all three formats. The 100 ball format, no. It's not the FA trying to sell Wembley. There are some things you just shouldn't do because it's short-sighted and it won't have the long-term impact that they hope. Cricket is a sport that I do love and I enjoy, but the TV deal they've got now is killing the game because you have to pay stupid amounts of frigging money to watch it on TV. When it was on Channel 4 and it was free to air and we won the Ashes 2005, the day we won the Ashes was the day Rupert Murdoch goes, I'll sign you up for that and I'll make sure I price loads of average families out of watching the game. And guess what? Viewership of cricket has gone down. Since the Sky Sports deal 2005, viewership has gone down. When it was on Channel 4, and before that BBC, viewership was going up year on year. People were going to Lord's, Trent Bridge, Edgbaston, the Oval, but they were also watching it at home. There was an interest because it was readily, freely available. You put it on pay-per-view TV, and you'll notice two things. One, people don't want to pay for it, and two, ironically, no one wants to go to the fucking game. Simple. If you have noticed, football attendances are actually going down the more games are put on pay-per-view TV. So they've taken the Champions League away from us and put it on BT and the Europa League, and attendances at games are going down because people are feeling a disconnect, and the ticket prices keep going up. Sky Sports does have cricket, and so does BT Sport as Cricket Australia rights. The BBC will be getting some rights to some games, I think, from 2020. But the BBC has shown in the last 5 years that they don't want to bid for sports rights. They would rather give up and surrender and have highlight package only or radio only, and they look really amateurial. And whoever's in charge of the BBC sport department deserves to be shot, quite honestly. Channel 5 have managed to squeeze out a couple of rights to rugby premiership games, but again, badly advertised. They've squeezed out very limited rugby matches off the TV. ITV, I've got the horse racing and the darts and the snooker, and the BBC's got a bit of snooker as well. So ITV has sort of salvaged darts a bit from Sky. They've nicked a lot back. They've got a lot of snooker on there, and BBC still has some snooker tournaments, but that's fast disappearing as well. No, not a problem. At least you made it this time. I know you've missed a couple of live streams and you were really annoyed about it. You've put you've asked a lot of good questions and you made a lot of interesting input, and you've aided the live stream. And it was nice to talk about cricket for the first time in a while. Most of the first half of the live stream was all football, and don't get me wrong, I used to love football, but as each day passes, I love it less and less and less. And Mike Talks Football, you did post a little clip of that was sent to you, obviously, about the I don't know if it was sent to you or you were actually at the game of the pitch invasion at Middlesbrough. We are having more and more of these. More and more of these pitch invasions and fan disturbances are happening. We've had it at Burnley this season against West Ham in October. We had it at West Ham against Burnley at West Ham. We've had it at Middlesbrough. We've had a few last season. We've had, I think it was it the Scottish Cup final last year or the year before, where they charged on the pitch at the end of the game. It's becoming a more common occurrence again, and it's a worry. Oh God, it is a worry for me as a sports fan that we are seeing more and more of these fan disturbances at games. And if people in the Labour Party want to say it's police cuts, no, it's not. It's just general thuggery. I get very bored of the political side of things. Where it's all police cuts. You can blame it on the current government. But no, sports violence and football violence in particular, and there's a little bit of rugby league and ice hockey in there as well. There's been a few incidents in rugby league and ice hockey where fans have either got involved with players or each other and had a bit of a punch up. That's down to the individuals just going, sod it, I'm not going to behave. I've got books on the subject about hooliganism in football. Books. It's not a new thing, and there's been an upsurge in it in the last couple of years. And the FA, the clubs, the Football League, the Premier League, the Scottish League, are not tackling it properly. So you look at what happened at Liverpool in the Champions League against Roma, with the guys being left half with what looks like severe stab and head injuries outside, and he wasn't even from Liverpool. He was a foreigner who was a Liverpool fan who come over from Ireland, and he was beaten half to death by Roma fans with hammers and knives and belts. And then you've got to look at what happened, the Man City Liverpool quarter final, both home and away for Liverpool and Man City, the misbehaviour of fans. And it was the police's fault that the Man City bus was attacked because they decided to change the route. And Pep Guardiola's whole commented, but we're noticing a lot more of this every week. And of course, Liverpool got to play Roma yet, and the Roma ultras are known to be real nasty people. And I've lived in Italy, so what I can tell you about Italian football, their hooligan element, the ultras, they don't care if they stab you multiple times and kill you. And with the World Cup coming up, especially what happened in France in 2016, where apparently we were at fault, when no, every fan base in France in the Euros was at fault. There was thuggery attached to every single country at the Euros. It so happened the Russians were the best prepared violently. They had actually trained for it. But at the Euros, every single country that went to the Euros in 2016 had a hooligan element attached to it. And the media portrayed us as the bad guys. And it's a thing. Even the British media portrays football fans as a whole as thugs. It is a minority, and it's worrying. And the FA is not being harsh enough with the penalties that should be dished out. There is precedent to dock points and throw teams out of leagues and suspend behind closed doors from other football associations. And the FA is a gutless organisation because they want to sell Wembley anyway. They're selling out for a short-term financial gain, even though they're going to be still in debt years down the line. But I did watch that clip you posted on your YouTube yesterday, and that is worrying me. We've had punch ups at rugby league as well, both here and in Australia. There's been some real nasty scenes, and yeah, there's been some punch ups at ice hockey matches as well. It's not just a football problem; it's a societal problem, and I don't know why it is that we just can't go down, watch sport in a friendly atmosphere, and go, I'm happy. I just do not understand it. What team do you support, Mike? I just want to know what team you follow, just so I get an idea of what happened. Oh, you're a Hereford. Okay, Hereford. Okay. Obviously Hereford are in the non-league, and that doesn't come under the Football League or the Premier League FA kind of structure. It's still an FA sanctioned competition, but it's not Football League sanctioned. So that's down to the non-league governing bodies of the various leagues, I believe. All I can say is this: it's happening in the non-league because some of these old ex-league clubs like Torquay, for example, uh, and um, and Hartlepool have got hooligan elements attached to them. I was once down on holiday down in the West Country, and there had been a bit of football violence, and two guys had been stabbed in Torquay after a game, 2005. Um, so when teams fall down the leagues, there are hooligan elements who are attached to them, who claim they're fans, but they're really not. They're just tribal thugs who've got gang connections and are bored and unemployable, tend to run amok. They see it as like a challenge to trash the opposition stadium or take their favourite pub and smash their pub. It's really juvenile, the thinking behind it. Um, but the issue is player safety. Player safety is an issue. Um, Obviously, with teams like Accrington, when they've now been made, Accrington's down in the Champions League too. Their fans charged on the pitch. The police are filming them. The fans aren't there to cause problems. They're just there to hug the players and celebrate. They're not like being a hooligan element. It's just an upsurge of joy from the Accrington Stanley fans. It's still again, they're still going to get punished for it because it's a pitch invasion. But a bit of common sense needs to be used here. The Middlesbrough Millwall pitch invasion is completely different. It's the same with the Wigan Man City one in the FA Cup. That was there were some nasty scenes there with missiles getting thrown and fans misbehaving. And Man City have been involved in several incidents this season. Common sense needs to prevail. If it's like a celebratory, let's run the pitch, hug the players, we've survived against relegation, we're staying up in the league, or we've got promoted, or we're champions, that is completely different to let's have a riot, let's try and attack opposition fans. But some of the policing and some of the security at some of the stadiums leaves a lot to be desired. Um, what I find interesting is obviously a few years back we were bidding for this World Cup that we're having this year in Russia and the Qatar World Cup. We were bidding for these World Cups to see if we could get them. I'm kind of glad we didn't because stadium security in the UK is a joke. Absolute joke. And the policing arrangements at some stadiums are shocking as well because the FA doesn't put a fund aside for clubs to have the policing costs covered. They say the clubs have to pay for the policing costs. And some clubs have a disagreement over the policing costs and they get threatened with if you can't cover the policing costs, you have to play the game behind closed doors, which we lose revenue. And that is an issue that keeps coming up as well, is the costs of security and policing. The FA doesn't have a fund or a support mechanism in place to support the clubs with those kind of costs. It falls upon the club. So if Wembley does get sold and England have to play internationals away from Wembley, that's great. Yeah, cool. Around the country, we get to see England play at Reading, at the Medeski, for example, or I don't know, Villa Park again, or Old Trafford, or wherever it may be. But here's the thing: the FA will not be paying the policing costs. It's the stadium owners or the clubs that will. And the security costs. It will not be the FA. The FA last time never did. It was the clubs. The clubs that bid to have internationals on their ground. So Sunderland had it the same light. There was a riot there. I remember years ago when we were playing at the Stadium Light. Sunderland bid to the FA to say, can we have the rights to have this international fixture at our stadium, please? Sunderland had to pay for the policing and security costs. That's my worry about this whole so-called Wembley sale, is that it's short term. It's a cash grab by the FA because they're broke. The FA has been financially mismanaged for years. It needs complete and utter reform. It does. It needs complete and utter structural reform. It's an outdated organisation that really needs internal, structural, and financial reform. And the issue I have with the FA, as it currently stands, is it's a poor guardian for the game. It's not governing the league properly. There's issues with the fit and proper persons test and financial fair play rules because they're not being enforced at all. Hence why Man City have basically bought the league for the next decade. It's not right. There are things wrong with the game in this country at the moment. Really wrong, like seriously wrong, and needs addressing. And unfortunately, it's not just football. A lot of sports in this country have structural problems in the governance of the sport. We've seen this season in the Elite League ice hockey that the Department of Player Safety had to be completely overhauled because the refereeing standard and the penalties and suspensions given out were, I wouldn't say inconsistent, but interesting decisions were made. And it was embarrassing. It made international ice hockey media all over the world basically laugh at the Elite League in the UK and say it's a bush league. Cricket, the ECB is coming up with this insane 100-ball format of the game, which makes no logical sense because you can't have, it makes no sense at all. 120s? That's 10 over cricket. I can deal with 120 ball. I can deal with that. I can deal with 60 ball. That's 10 overs. 120 is 20 overs. I can deal with the short formats of the game. The ECB needs structural reform. The RFU has a few issues as well. Rugby league has problems. Sport in this country is badly governed by the governing bodies. But no, there's been a lot of interesting points you guys have made tonight, and here Hereford is a big non-league club, and used to be in the football league as well. And that is a club that was badly run. Not the fans' fault, not the players' fault. It's behind the scenes, really badly run. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of clubs that, be it non-league or in the fully professional leagues, that have some really dodgy owners, and the FA doesn't step in when it should. I'd much rather talk about some more positive things, but for some reason there's a lot of negative stuff going on in sport at the moment, and it seems to make a very good live stream and some good discussions. There's some really interesting things happening that are really positive and or newsworthy, of a good nature, where we can discuss the pros and cons of the NHL entry draft, and the fact that the Buffalo Sabres, for example, are drafting first, or the fact that a rugby league player in Australia is now being drafted by the NFL and is changing sports. Those are the things I would like to talk about. But the questions you keep asking are about all these things that are happening at the moment that aren't good, and I seem to know a lot about it. But no, I mean, interesting stuff we've discussed. And I'm happy. I mean, I'm going to wind the live stream down in a little bit, but I'm interested in a few more questions. And if you've got any, I'm happy to answer. I forgot to turn my bloody plug on. I forgot to have the plug turned on. So my laptop was running out of battery. That was interesting. But no, if you've got any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer a couple more. The live stream's winding down a little bit now. I'm probably going to call it a night in about 5-10 minutes. But if you've got any more questions, feel free to post them, and I'll do my best to answer them. Really, I mean, this live stream has been quite interesting. And if you want to catch up on stuff that you missed, if you weren't here from the beginning, we discussed a lot of what's going on in Scottish football, what's happening with Sunderland. I mean, Brecon City going a whole season without a win, that I find that unbelievable, really. I've never come across a football side to do that before, so that's interesting. And then we've discussed cricket. We've discussed a bit of the ice hockey and the playoffs and things like that. Right, the Edinburgh Capitals. I believe the team that are going to be called the Murrayfield Racers. Either way, either the Capitals or the Racers, there will be a team in Edinburgh for next season. Otherwise, it leaves the league with an uneven number of teams, which screws up everything. Because obviously it's a playoff-based league. At the end, there's a postseason. I believe the Edinburgh Capitals, if they do go defunct, the Murrayfield Racers are ready to step in. Whether they're just as bad. I mean, I watched another YouTuber who It's an ice hockey YouTuber, Odd Man Rush, and I watch Post to Post. And I've seen and I watch the hockey guys. There's several other YouTubers that I watch who are hockey based, and they all so apart from the hockey guy, they've mentioned the Edinburgh Capitals in their videos. And Odd Man Rush, he's from the UK. He's English, which is interesting for a hockey YouTuber. It's really interesting. And he looked at the history of the Edinburgh Capitals up to February, I think it was. They hadn't won a game for the rest of the season. They won. How many wins? They had 11 points. I think they won like 4 games this season, or 5 games, or something. And they had a couple of overtimes losses. They were an absolute their record, their win loss record is their win percentage this season was 12%. Well, if you're only winning, I mean, you got to look at their win loss percentage. So they played like 600 odd games. They've only won 100 and something of them. They have they win 1/6 of the games they played. They are at I think a 12% win percentage or something overall. It's somewhere between 12 and 20% win percentage. That is how many games they actually have won in their entire history. So their win loss record, their win loss ratio is like 1 for 6 or 1 for 5 or something. They're at about a 25% win record. So they haven't been successful. They've made the top 6 in their league. But bear in mind, the league was smaller when they made the top 6 once. They've made the playoffs, I think, 5 times in 13 years. They have been basically a bottom feeder. Now, because the Elite League is a lot smaller than the NHL, you don't have that centralized, revenue sharing where you can help a team out. The Murrayfield races, it is technically Murrayfield. It's the Murrayfield Ice Rink. It's next to Murrayfield Rugby Stadium. It's in that part of Edinburgh. Good transport links. It depends how the Murrayfield races, if they do come in, brand themselves, how they advertise, how they attract the fan base to go from the capitals to the races. And with what's happened with the Great Britain team winning their division in the ice hockey and getting promoted to the top tier of international ice hockey, that's a good news story. Let's go with it. Let's roll with it. That should be there because there's a lot of Scottish players involved with the Great Britain team and the Great Britain setup. So you want to roll with that. You want to promote that. The fact that the league has actually expanded by 2 more teams this year and is growing, you want to roll with that. So if it is the Murrayfield races that come in, or if someone buys the Edinburgh Capitals logo and their rights and keeps the name going, they've got to fund the team. They've got to be able to splash the cash and say, we want to sign these top level free agents from Europe and we want to sign the best British players that are available, because they haven't kept a good squad together. They've gone through coaches like no tomorrow. It's much like, think of it like Rangers in the Scottish football. There's been no stability and no success for a long period of time, and they have a high player and coach turnover. So you can't hope for them to be successful. Murrayfield, I think they will attract the same crowds, if not more, because Edinburgh haven't been successful for years. They've never really been successful. They've had a lack of success for their entire existence, and that is a problem. That is an issue, is they have just been absolutely appalling for their entire 13-year existence in the Elite League. They have been the bottom team. I think they haven't been the bottom team. I think 3 seasons they weren't the bottom team. They have been that bad for that long. And that's what is killing them. There have been financial issues. They are well documented. They got really bad this season. And I mean, I follow the league below the NIHL, not the Elite League. I follow the National Ice Hockey League. That's where my team play. Although Guildford is local, I live in Bracknell, so I'm a Bracknell Bees fan. Supporting a team that has had money problems in the last decade, I know what it's like to have money issues as a supporter of a team in a sport. And I know what it's like to be a bottom feeder in a league, because for a couple of seasons we were really not very good because of the money issues. So it was harder to attract the better free agents, the import players. and the better domestic players as well. But fans kept turning up. Even when the team were absolutely abysmal, fans kept turning up, because there was a team unity about the situation. If we stopped turning up, the team would die. And this year was better, and we made progress. So it's all about how you market the team and what you get people involved. Because Manchester have gone out of business. Manchester Storm went out of business in 2003. Manchester Phoenix went out of business last year. They keep having new teams pop up. Manchester is a prime example. I think it's how if the Murrayfield Racers come in, it's how they market to the new fans, because the whole Stingrays went out of business and the whole Pirates started up in 2015, and it took a while for them to get good and to get fans. It took a couple of years. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's about a long-term plan and going, right, okay, the first year we're probably going to be crap. Now, Guildford and Milton Keynes have actually proven that they can compete in the higher level, because they went up from the old EPL to the the Elite League. Guildford have done really well this year. Milton Keynes, okay, they were second bottom, but even they were beating established Elite League sides. With the brand new roster, they had to completely go, right, what good British players do we still have from the EPL days that we can keep? And what imports can we get, and how can we survive? And they have survived and shown that they are competitive. Ice upkeep and maintenance, those costs will stay the same regardless of what league you're in. A rink is a rink. If your costs in the NIHL for rink maintenance will be exactly the same in the Elite League, that's not the issue. It's the salaries. That is the issue, is the coach and player salaries. And for some reason, Edinburgh have had money issues where the ownership hasn't really invested, and the budget's been Christ, the Edinburgh Capital's budget was basically the budget of an old EPIHL team, so the league below, which has now gone out of business because one team went bust and two teams, Guildford and Milton Keynes, joined the Elite League. That's basically, their budget was a little bit bigger than the top budget in what was the old EPL, the old English Premier League Ice Hockey League. The Edinburgh Capitals have deliberately had themselves on a smaller budget because of ownership, not because the fans didn't want to see success. The owner didn't want to invest. So why own the team then if you don't want to invest to it? Yes, Fife. The Fife rink is small, but they've always had a good team. The Fife Flyers is one of the oldest teams in British ice hockey. It doesn't matter about the size of the rink. Honestly, it doesn't. It doesn't matter about the size of the rink. It's more the team you put on the ice and how they play. That's what matters to me. The size of your arena doesn't bother me. You could have like a Sheffield size arena, or Belfast, or a Coventry, one of the bigger arenas. I mean, Sheffield have got two arenas they play in, because the Steelers arena can also be used for concerts and other events. So they use the Steel Dogs arena sometimes for some games. Nottingham's got a big arena. It doesn't matter about the size of your arena. It matters about the team that play. And it is an old arena. It's 1938, I think, or 1936. It's an old arena, but hey, it works for them. That's the reason why Fife have been going since the 1930s. It works for them. And Fife is not the most populous. Kilcoddy is not the biggest population area in Scotland outside of Edinburgh and Glasgow, is it? I mean, you've got to work out that the local area is going to have a smaller fan base than Braehead or the Capitals or Dundee. But it works for them. It works for Fife. And you've got to see what the London Raiders now, well, the Romford Raiders, London Raiders, they finally got a new rink built, and the council decided to help fund it. Same with Streatham. That's where we need to invest, because companies like Planet Ice, look what's happened to Basingstoke's rink. So if you don't follow the the league below and the teams below the elite league. There are some rink issues for some teams in this country, and it's nice to see that the council has built 2 rinks in the London area for 2 of the teams, Streatham and Romford, London, depending how you want to call them, Raiders. They've come in and the local council stepped and said, we're building a community facility that you can also use for your league matches and bring in revenue, and you can help. It's a community thing. I don't know why Dundee decided to change their name. That's obviously up to the ownership and how they want to, brand the team and sell the product to, their fans or the league or the wider world. Several teams have changed their names before. Streatham have done it. Swindon have done it. Basingstoke have done it. Several teams have changed their names before. It's not a new thing. It's not common, but it has been done, and that's down to the ownership group. That is down to the owners. They're the ones who have the rights to the name, to the logo, and it's completely up to them. They may wanted a brand change to try and inject some more life into the franchise, into the team, into the fan base. I don't know why. Yeah, well, that's the problem with having 2 professional football teams separated by a road in Dundee. Dundee and Dundee United. If your dividing line between the 2 clubs is a road, it's going to be interesting. That's the closest rivalry you can think of, literally in a rivalry. But Dundee and Dundee United at times have been successful. It is interesting how that happened. It's a random quirky thing about British sport, I suppose. And it's the friendliest rivalry you'll find in football as well. No, it really is the friendliest rivalry you will find in football. The main road between middle of central Dundee, one stadium's on one side and one stadium's literally 50 feet away on the other. And I'm not joking, that is how close the stadiums are to each other. It's a strange rivalry. Both clubs share the same hooligan firm. I've got a book on that. Dundee and Dundee United share the same firm because it's such a weird existence in that city that they have 2 football clubs that are separated by a road. Yeah, I mean, this is what I find really funny about North Americans and how they do not understand European sporting rivalries. Because I tell you now, they think their fans can get visceral and vile. They have really not seen it when we lose our shit. North Americans really fail to understand how brutal our rivalries really are. When I say rivalries, some of these, people get murdered watching these games. It's not just having throwing a few cans of beer over the opposition, having a little punch up. People actually get murdered at football riots in Europe and in this country. I can remember Millwall West Ham in 2009, and a man was with his son, and they got separated, and 3 lads stabbed him in front of his son. So that is how vicious these rivalries get. Turkish football, Italian football, German football, they can get really violent. They make our hooligans look just a bunch of pissheads. And the North American lack of knowledge of how vile these rivalries get. When I say vile, I mean really tribal. I mean like tribes going to war, tribal, like medieval. They don't get it. They're very dismissive and arrogant about our rivalries. They do not understand how really vicious they get. And as we've seen in recent weeks, and as we saw yesterday, Middlesbrough and Millwall were trying to kill each other. There was a pitch invasion. It got nasty. It wasn't pleasant. There's been a rise in incidents like the Liverpool Man City, the Liverpool Roma, Man City Wigan. there's a lot of hatred between certain. I think almost every fan base hates you. I mean, there's always that thuggish element, and it doesn't go anywhere. And it's not just football; it's rugby league as well. It's ice hockey. There's some of these fan bases really it gets vicious. I've even seen at cricket matches Australian fans throwing tin cans of lager at players and each other, and abuse their own players on TV. I've seen it. I've read about it. Um, I don't know what it is. And Americans think, their rivalries, they're brilliant. Yeah, you haven't seen some of the stuff we do in our spare time. It's an argument I'm happy to have with any Yank. Um, but no, Man United Leeds when I was a kid was one of the nastiest. Blackburn Burnley, um, Newcastle Sunderland, Hibs Hearts, Celtic Rangers, Dundee Motherwell Aberdeen, Aberdeen Dundee, either Dundee club. Some of them are really vicious. Like even Grimsby Scunthorpe gets bloody if they were ever to play again against each other. Portsmouth Southampton, Yeovil Exeter. Oh yeah, Bristol Rovers Bristol City. Even in the lower leagues, some of the rivalries are vicious. And the North American sports culture just doesn't get it. And then you got to go look in Europe, like AC Inter, Juventus Torino, Lazio Roma. They try and kill each other. No, I'm not joking. They actually, like Dortmund, Leverkusen, they will try and kill each other. Bayern Munich, anyone. Marseille, Nice, that's one. Lille, PSG, they will actually physically, try and kill each other. It's like Real Barcelona, they will get violent. Like it's not just a British problem; it's a European and South American problem when it comes to football violence. And the Americans just don't get it. It's hilarious. They think their rivalries are the best thing on God's green earth, and they completely. Oh, Senesi and Leon now. Ooh, well, that's an obscure one. That is no, they don't like each other. It's the same in Boca Juniors, River Plate in Argentina, for example. It gets violent, and Holland Feyenoord Ajax, Sparta Rotterdam final, um, PSV Eindhoven, AZ Alkmaar. It gets terrifying, and North Americans just don't realise how brutal we are to each other. It is feral. And it's the same in Australia when it comes to the NRL and the AFL. Like the Aussie rules and the rugby league, their fans are feral as well, and it's not a pleasant atmosphere. And I'm a big NRL fan. I've seen a lot of games on the internet. Okay, I'll be fair, I've seen them on the internet, but you can hear the chanting and you can sometimes see the punch. I've seen punch ups. A lot of live TV, they're just kicking shit out of each other. It happens. These rivalries are there. They go back a long, long way. It's like Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday. That's not a nice rivalry. That can get really nasty. Liverpool, and either team from Merseyside versus either team from Manchester. Even Tranmere Bury is a violent game. Stockport Chester, that back in the day was a heated little rivalry. Blackpool Preston, that can get nasty. You will be surprised, just how vicious some of these rivalries actually get. I've listed so many in English football and Scottish football, but you can look in Europe. Just look at Russia. Look at Poland. Oh God, it's the thing is it when they give their reasons why they do it, it's so juvenile and so moronic. It's unbelievable. And Then these are not young lads. Some of these guys. Some of these guys are in their 30s and 40s. It's really like really, and it's actually quite sad. It is really really depressing. But no, you're right. It is about, you know, our town versus your town, or our city versus your city, and it goes back a long, long way, pre-industrial revolution, to when countries were more regional, and it sort of evolved from these regional rivalries for like industry and centralized government aid and employment prospects and all sorts. It really does go back to the early days of the industrial revolution, the rivalry between certain cities over, like, various things, political rivalries. Um, it's like St. Pauli versus Hamburg. One is a left wing supported club and one is a right wing supported club, and that is how it's been since the Nazis were in power in Germany, in Hamburg. So some of it's to do with politics as well. It's not just territory; it's a political leaning. So it's Espanyol and Barcelona. One is pro Spain and one's pro Catalan. Atletico is working class and Real is upper class. Sometimes there's a class difference in some countries. It's not just about territory and pride. Some places it can get political and social, and you're in the same bloody city. It's like the Birmingham, Aston Villa, West Brom kind of dynamic, partly territorial, but at the same time, um, there's other bits. There will still be trouble in Moscow. Um, so Moscow, St. Petersburg, Rostov, Rubin Kazan. There will still be issues in any Russian city. Um, I can see a lot of problems this summer, and it's not just going to be England fans that will get the brunt of it. Um, I can see the Germans having a lot of problems in Russia. I can see, I think Poland are in there as well. I can see Croatia having issues. I can see it getting really, really. I think Serbia will have problems. I mean, the Serbians maybe not so much, but definitely the Croatians, the Germans. I think the Poles. I think the Poles are qualified. Um, there's going to be some real nasty, nasty stuff happening. And of course, in the African team, the racism in Russia is off the scale. Um, I can see a lot of countries getting. It's going to be nasty. I'm not gonna lie, it's going to be brutal. Um, People have asked on my channel if I'm going. No. Am I watching? Yes. Um, will I be surprised if there is some kind of fan disorder? Not at all. Yeah, no, you got to think of it. When the German World Cup was on 2006, there was a lot of thunderstorms. Same with the French Euros. In the summer, and we even get it here in this country, is if you get a high pressure system and it heats up the land, and then that it just takes a low pressure system over the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, or the Atlantic or North Sea, just to move slightly and meet that hot air, and it's slightly cooler air, you're going to get heavy torrential flash flood thunderstorms. Um, I've been researching and following football since I was a kid. I've got books on it, I've got DVDs, videotapes, the lot. European summers are like this. I've lived out in Europe and I've seen thunderstorms in Europe in the summer. It gets very, very hot. It will stay hot for 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 days. You might have a little heat wave, and that heat wave ends with a massive set of thunderstorms for a day or two, and then it might get warm again, and the humidity will be about 60 to 80%, and it's a clear day, and that builds for several days, and that will cause people to overheat. It will cause people to. Well, 2 weeks ago, it was 26 degrees here, so April, May is a weird time of year, but June, July, that is the height of summer, and we're talking 36 to 40 degrees. That's how hot it will get. Add to that 80% humidity, and you're going to have a lot of alcohol. People who are overheated, so you're going to get stressed and aggy. Cheap alcohol, heat. You are going to have trouble. You are going to have a perfect storm for violence. alcohol and heat do not mix. Add to that organised groups of thugs who are looking for trouble, be it Russians or others, who are out there, add a bit more fuel to them, be it drugs or alcohol, and heat, you're going to have a perfect storm of violence. And it will happen. It will happen. And that's the worry I have, is it's just going to explode. Cheap alcohol, heat, and organised groups and gangs looking for a fight. You know, um, it's a recipe for disaster. Um, I'm not a fan of the Avengers. I'm not a fan of Marvel. I'm not a fan of DC. Okay, I've got Deadpool. That's an exception to the rule. It's not my type of film that I would watch, and it's not my type of genre. I'm not into that type of movie. I'm not into that type of. I think Marvel and DC are a bit too far with the amount of films they made. I like the cartoons. I like the animes. I like the comic books. I think the films have got a bit OTT for me. Some of them are great visual effects, great storylines, but it's just a bit too much for me. There's constant bombardment, and it just not my thing. It's something that I wouldn't enjoy. But I understand. I've heard it's a good film. I've got mates who've already seen it. They've said it's a good film. It's just not my type of film. Is that a good answer? I don't know. I should really have like a movie and TV channel, shouldn't I? Or a book channel. I think I should have a channel for like these movies. Not really. I'm not really a big fan of the sci-fi genre. I'm more into the action thrillers, war films, and that kind of thing, like cop buddy films. And I'm more into something that could be based on a true story, such as Heat, which is a good film, um, or Goodfellas, that type of thing, that kind of crime action drama thing. I like Goodfellas. I like Casino, Raging Bull, all that kind of stuff. Especially the crime gangster films, proper mafia films that are based on real events, such as Goodfellas. That's my type of film. Goodfellas. Goodfellas is my favorite film. Followed closely by Heat, because that's also based on real events. They're my two favorite films. Um, there's a few war films in there, but they're my two favorite films. I also like the occasional comedy action as well, like Rush Hour, but Goodfellas is my favorite film. Um, Die Hard, I prefer Lethal Weapon. Um, I do prefer Lethal Weapon. But I will tell you this about Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. The first film where they appear in the same scene at the same time is Heat in 1995 with a very young Natalie Portman. Check it out. It's got Val Kilmer in it. It's got Tom Sizemore from Saving Private Ryan fame. It's got some really famous actors who are now famous that at the time were a bit less well known. You've got a very young Hank Azaria from The Simpsons and Godzilla fame in there as well. But bear in mind, they're both in the Godfather trilogy, but they never appeared in the same scene at the same time. Heat is the first time that Al Pacino and De Niro are in the same film, and Al Pacino is the good guy. Work that one out. It's a brilliant film. It's got some funny bits in it as well, but it's also got some really hard hitting bits as well. But there's some really funny bits in Heat with Al Pacino, especially. His character is brilliant. Die Hard is a Christmas film. Not gonna lie. It's my favorite Christmas film, along with Lethal Weapon, because they're both set at Christmas. I have all the Die Hards and all the Lethal Weapons. I don't know how we got onto films, but it's a good way to end the live stream. Yeah, no, anything to do with Tarantino, Miramax has a lot to do with it. I do unfortunately have some Miramax films. Not realizing how, you know, yeah, unfortunately, I've realised I've got a fair few Miramax films, which is really, really annoying, including Master and Commander, which is a thing annoying because that's a damn good film. Um, the issue is with Quentin Tarantino, more is going to come out about that. His links to Weinstein. There's a lot of allegations about Tarantino as well. Yeah, anything to do with Tarantino is a Miramax. all Tarantino's films are Miramax, so that's every film he's ever made, and that is a problem. And you'll notice a lot of Tarantino's films may have settings in New York or scenes shot in New York because that's where Miramax's offices were. Interesting, we're a sports channel and we're talking about films. This is a great way to end the live stream, and we're talking on some cool stuff that I know a fair bit about, and I've got a lot of films. But the Weinstein thing has happened. I mean, what is it? Shit. Kevin Spacey. He's one of the characters. He plays one of the characters in this Call of Duty. Yeah, he's got his own problems as well. What can you say, really? It's not just Harvey Weinstein. It's a wider culture issue within that industry that's been going on for a lot. Bill Cosby's been found guilty of his charges dating back to 2004. It's a wider issue within the Hollywood film, TV industry that's been going on for a good 20, 30 years, if not longer. And it comes back to some of the things I'm a Blackburn Rovers fan. That's been discussed many times, but I'm happy to answer every time. I'm a Blackburn Rovers fan, always have been, always will be. I've been supporting them since 1992, and I'm 28. So yeah, I've been supporting them for 28 years, near enough. 28 years I've been following them. So I was born in '89, so I was coming up 3-4 years old when I decided to start following football, and I chose them. And I do have sort of links to the Northwest, but that is my favourite football club is Blackburn. So I'm a proud Rovers fan, and have been for a very long time through thick and thin. And there's been a lot of thin lately. But I'm going to finish the live stream here, and I'm going to recap everything for those who joined the live stream late. We started off on football, and we are ending on football. Scottish football we had a lot of Scottish football with the Celtic win over Rangers. Brechin City going a whole season without a win. That's a little tidbit for a pub quiz. Any generalised quiz, we can say Brechin City in the 2017-2018 season had 5 draws and no wins. And that was their season. 5 points of it. We covered a bit of cricket and changes in the game and issues with the ICC. My view on Test cricket is day-night Test matches. That's the way. Yeah, that is a pub quiz question. Now, I do know that Ancona in Serie A in 2003-2004 season got 5 points, but they got 1 win and 2 draws. So I'm trying to find. I want you guys to find a team like Brechin who has gone a whole season without winning a game, but has got less points. If you can find me a football team that has done that, I'll do a video on it. I will actually research it. I don't think there's a team that has been as bad as that Brechin team. So we discussed that. We discussed Sunderland and Chris Coleman losing his job and the new owners. We discussed the FA selling Wembley a little bit and the issues with the FA and how they're not running the game properly. We've discussed the NHL playoffs. We've discussed the Elite League. Repeat the question. Oh, okay. Brechin City only had 5 draws this season. They got 5 points. I want to see if you guys, because you guys are very knowledgeable about your sport, you guys are exceptionally knowledgeable about your sport. If you can find me a team that has done worse than Brechin City did this season, so let's say they have to have 4 draws, no wins, for example. They have to be worse than Brechin City. Ancona in the Serie A in 2003-2004 had the same amount of points as Brechin City, so they had 5 points, but they had 1 win and 2 draws. So if you guys can find me a team that was worse than Brechin City for their season record in the league with no wins and actually did worse, I will do a video on it. That's my little challenge to you guys. And for those who are going to be watching the live stream later when it's uploaded and it's just a video, again, I challenge you guys to find me a football team that has a worse season record than Brechin did this year. I do think it has happened before, but I think those teams have actually got more draws and actually had more points. So I'll be interested to see like what people come back with on it. Um, but no, we've covered a lot tonight. We've covered the NHL playoffs. We've covered a bit on the Elite League and the collapse of Edinburgh, the Capitals. Oh no, I think there actually is, but I'm not sure if they were that bad. There have been teams that have gone a whole season without winning, but never so few points. Um, so there has to be. There surely has to be in some league somewhere. But you guys are a quite intelligent bunch. I'm sure someone out there does know and will probably be more of an encyclopedia than I could ever be. But I think that's a wrap. I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave you on. Can you find me a worse team than Brecon City in professional football? That is my quest that I set out to you guys. Should you accept your challenge, I'm going to leave the live stream there with the. Can you find me a worse team than Brecon City for their season record? So I know teams have gone a whole season without winning before, but I've had more draws. I know a team that has got the same amount of points but had a win. So I'm assuming there has to be a team out there that has had less draws than Brecon City and therefore has 4 points or less somewhere in professional football in the history books. There has to be. That's my challenge to you guys: is find me that team, and I shall do a video on it and go. This was the season that this team were worse than Brecon City. But no, thank you very much for watching, guys. Thank you for participating. A lot of good questions, a lot of good topics, and we even talked about film as well. We actually got on to my favourite films. And I could do a list of my favourite films of all time in a live stream if you want, or I'll do a video on it, even though it's a sports channel. But yeah, we're going to leave that there. Thank you, everyone. Great questions, and see you tomorrow.